Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road. You know, since we started this show and this ministry, this outreach, where we try to teach the Bible to connect the culture with Christ through stories of restoration, I have been contacted by numerous people that said, hey, you got to have Cam Tribolet on your show. And we're about 250 episodes in, and I finally get him, and I find out we're almost neighbors as far as country speak. Yeah. Cam, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
You have a new book, Dead 13 Times, and I'd just like you to pick it up at the beginning of your life, kind of describing what was going on and how you grew up and those influences prior to the fateful day.
Sure. Yeah, it started all off with I was in kind of a tough family situation. Mom and Dad was never home, basically work commitments and stuff like that. And way back then, they owned 2 taverns here in Fort Wayne, and that started my downhill spiral into alcohol. Very young age, probably 18 years old. I was sneaking in the cooler with a beer, or walking past the bar, getting a sip of Galliano, that type of thing, and that's very young. And then that followed me all through junior high, and things just kept getting worse and worse. And then later in junior high, I started getting into drugs and further into alcohol, and then through high school, things really started getting bad. Was kicked out of high school quite a bit, drunk all the time.
Even at school?
Oh yeah, sneaking alcohol in, and it got worse and worse and worse. Then when I finally left school at 18, I was on my own, and as you can imagine, things just went even further out of control. On my own in my own house at 18, it was party every night. Cocaine really got into the normal habit for me almost every day.
So you're searching for more and more of a fix all the way from junior high to that point. You just try to do more and more. Do you ever get in trouble with your parents? Do they take away the keys from you, or make sure you can't get access to the liquor, and then you always find the way there?
That's exactly what happened. On the money. Yeah,
you're an entrepreneur.
Always in trouble, but always find a way to get out of trouble. That was me. And like I said, cocaine was every night. I was my dad always taught us to work hard. He was a contractor. And so as a young age, we're always working hard. Yeah. So for me to work hard and party hard, it meant I needed to stay always awake and ready to go. That unfortunately led me to the worst night of my life, and probably the best night of my life.
It's interesting you describe it that way.
It was August 31st, 1986. I'd been out drinking all night. My bars of choice back then was normal strip clubs and places I shouldn't be at. And got home, and I thought, you know what? I looked at my watch, and I'm like, I can make last call. So I packed everything back up, grabbed some beer, and I took off. And I was heading downtown, like I said, trying to get the last call, and got to a stoplight there at Coliseum and 3. And car pulled up next to me, so I rolled down my window, because they're eyeballing me, so I rolled down my window to see what they want, and the guy came out his back seat and walked up to my truck and just hauled off and punched me in the face.
Now, are you high or drunk at that time?
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. So as I'm getting punched on, he's beating on my truck. I just remember reaching for that truck door. I'm getting out of my truck, and that's when everything went black.
And what had happened?
What happened was they put it all back together for me. We got in a fight at that stoplight, and the guy shot me 3 times in the stomach.
And what were they? Was it a carjacking? I mean, in this case, a truck. But what do you have any idea what the purpose was?
We don't know. We don't know to this day. I just know that they came up and wanted a piece of me at the light.
And you don't know who or why to this day? To
this day, I still remember the guy's 4-door blue car. It's 3 guys, 2 in the front, 1 in the back. I mean, I remember the intersection. I know all that perfectly. As far as what he looked like, I don't remember. What happened after I opened the truck door, I don't remember.
So I imagine there's enormous pain being shot 3 times, but you're blacked out and you don't remember that pain at that moment.
No.
Did somebody call an EMS?
Well, I got back to my truck.
Oh, my.
I got back in my truck. I made it across Coliseum and passed out from loss of blood.
Oh, my goodness.
Crossed the center line, came back around. I crashed right behind the picker.
Oh, my.
And thank God it was about closing time, because they heard my truck crash behind the picker as they were walking through their parking lot, and they were able to call EMS to get me to the hospital.
What time of day?
Oh, that was probably 3:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
So when the EMS got there, like I said, this is what's all been pieced back together for me.
Sure.
They just thought I was a crash victim. They didn't know that I had been shot until they got me in the hospital and got me undressed and checked me out. And that's when they found the 3 bullet holes. And they rushed me right into surgery, of course, and got it fixed. One of the bullets went through the aorta. One went through my bowel, and one went through the intestines and lodged in my spine. And they worked to get the aorta fixed, and they put a new graft in to fix that aorta. But with the bowel being opened up, the infection just flooded my body. That the infection then ate away at the graft that they did on my aorta. So now I got a new aorta that runs down from my neck. If you feel underneath my shirt, you can feel it underneath my skin to this day. It goes down and feeds both legs.
Oh, my.
But the time it took for all that to happen, the infections set in really bad. Gangrene set in, and they ended up having to take both legs off.
So they didn't have to take both legs off due to the spine, it was due to the infection?
Due to the infections, yeah, and loss of blood.
So how quickly did they remove your legs?
That was within, I believe it was within 2 weeks of being in the hospital, within a week or two or something like that. But I was in a coma the whole time. And the infections got so bad that I had full kidney failure, liver failure. My heart kept stopping. They had put a pacemaker in finally to keep that from going out. I was in full renal failure. And the doctors told my parents that, just nobody survives that much trauma to their body and then get ready to bury Cam.
They're prepared to bury you?
Yeah, they've gone as far as picked out the casket and made funeral arrangements, the whole works.
So what happens?
Grace of God, as simple as that. One night, and it's funny when people say that you can hear, if you're in a coma, you can hear. I could hear people in my room that night.
You really could?
I could hear people in my room talking to me and crying, and for some reason they're yelling at me like I can, like they need to yell at me. But I'm laying there thinking, oh, just please be quiet, But
you can't communicate back.
Can't communicate. I had a trach in, so of course I couldn't talk. Yeah, it was crazy.
And you die physically 13 times?
Doctors and my parents said they brought me back over 13 times. And I you hear about all the experiences of the light and seeing Christ and all that. I had all those. I saw the light of Christ.
Describe that.
It reminds me of dream sequences on TV. That's kind of what it felt like back then. But there's one that, I was a contractor. I was in a building, and I'm removing a window because it was rotten sill. And I remember cutting through the sill.
This is in your dream?
Yes, this is in the...
Or whatever's
when
happening
I saw the
in
light,
that moment.
yeah. As I'm cutting through the sill, I pulled the sill up, and through the wall cavity shoots this bright light. And I look at that thinking, why is there a bright light? And I felt somebody from behind me almost pick me up and try to shove me down into that light. And I remember, the wall cavity is only this big. And I remember my head and my shoulders are in that cavity. And I'm holding onto that wall as much as I can. I'm thinking, I'm not going that light. I'm not going that light. And I kept feeling the pushing in. And I could see it as bright as can be. And I just remember pushing out and I'm out. And everything went black again. Another one was about the same thing, another dream sequence. I was kind of crazy. I was a movie star.
You kind of look like one, actually.
Oh, thank you. But I was coming out of my trailer, and the director says, okay, now in this part of the show, the scene here, you're supposed to go into that light. And I'm like, no, I'm not going into that light. He says, yeah, it says right here in this book, right here, that you're supposed to walk into that light. And I'm like, no, I quit. I'm not walking in that light. And I remember the screaming, you have to walk into that light. You have to walk. I'm like, no, I don't. I turned around, walked back in the trailer, and everything went black again. And I had another experience where I'm actually rising up from my bed, And as I'm turning around and everything went black, and then I could hear gunshots. And I explained that to the doctor one time, and he said, well, that was probably what you're hearing, the banging noises. That was when we were shocking you back.
Oh.
And then the same thing, everything went black again. There's several others, but the one that really, today, really gets me was, I was at a hospital here downtown Fort Wayne at St. Joe Hospital. Mm-hmm. And as I'm laying in ICU, I could see Christ up on the cross, on the crucifix above the door.
So are you conscious and awake on the bed with your eyes open, or are you asleep when this happens?
I am conscious, I'm awake. I'm seeing this happening because I can see the glass doors in front of me. I can see the nurses. And like I said, as I'm looking at Christ up on the cross, he comes down off the cross. And you know, this is just a cross this big. He comes down off the cross and takes full size as a man. And I can't see his face, but I can tell it's him. It's kind of a flowing vision, and he's walking to my bed. And you know, all the other times that I saw the light, I fought it. Didn't want to go into light, but this time it just felt different to me. I welcomed it. So as he's walking to the bed, and he's getting about almost as close to me and you, and he turns into a hideous creature. Rust-colored skin, wrinkled yellow eyes, and now I can see a face, and I'm seeing the full outline. And to me, I mean, instantly I'm thinking that's the devil. And I closed my eyes. I kept saying over again, please turn back into Jesus. Please turn back into Jesus. And I look up, and he's right here. And I'm looking at his eyes. I'm thinking, please turn back into Jesus. And I kept saying it over and over again. And that creature of whatever it was started walking backwards, took the form of Christ again, and went up on the cross above my bed.
Now, how do you interpret that?
Well, back then I just thought it was crazy. But now, knowing what I know now, being a follower of Christ, that was that fight between good and evil that night. That was it. Someone was coming to get me.
There was this spiritual warfare for your soul.
Absolutely. And that's absolutely and the life I led up to that point leads me to believe that the devil owned me. He was going to come and take me. And Christ won that night. Christ took me.
As you write about that in your book, I mean, I can't put it down. And there was a question that I just really wanted to ask you. Can you recall 13 of those visions?
I can recall 6.
Wow.
I can recall 6 times.
That is amazing. Well, what happens after that vision in your spirit and in your mind? Where do you go with this tragedy that's happened to you? Does a doctor come to you and in that time period after that vision and tell you you've lost your legs?
You know, obviously I start getting better. The infection's left my body. They're bringing me out of the coma. And I'm laying there, and it just, to me, felt like my legs were bound. And I remember mouthing to my nurse, because I still couldn't talk because of the trach in me, that my legs hurt. And so I couldn't really talk, so she handed me a piece of paper, so I wrote down my legs hurt. And she looked at me, she said, Cam, your legs can't hurt because you don't have any legs. Now, in her defense, she thought I knew. She thought the doctors already told me, the family already told me, but it was, and I looked down, I remember laying in the bed, and I'm looking down, and all I see are these gauzed legs on pillows. And I lost it. They had to come in and restrain me. I was pulling hoses and things on me because I had no idea what was going on. Nobody explained to me that, you know, Cam, this is what happened to you. Mm-hmm. And I just lost it. Next thing I know, I was being sedated.
Wow.
Yeah.
What happens next?
I lost my house. I lost my job. I lost my insurance because insurance stopped being paid when I was in the hospital. I was declared indigent. My fiance left me. I lost my self-esteem. I lost my will to live. I said then that, you know, once I get out of the hospital, I'm not going to live like this. That I'm just going to end it all as soon as I get home.
You wanted to kill yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
You were able to support your cocaine habit by working so hard,
mm-hmm.
I assume. And now everything's stripped from you, literally, and you're in the spiritual warfare type state, do you have any withdrawal symptoms, or do the meds keep you sedated enough that you don't have those?
It was the meds that kept me sedated enough to didn't really feel. I was on morphine. Had one of those pumps, and I mean I had it timed every 7 minutes. I'd hit that pump, and it's just because then I got addicted to the morphine, and then coming off the morphine was just terrible. So the cocaine habit was gone, but the
morphine habit came.
The morphine habit, yeah.
Well, when did they start physical therapy?
It was about, oh, holy cow. I was in the hospital for a total of 8 months.
And several surgeries?
Oh, dozens and dozens of surgeries, many transfusions. But yeah, I think it was about that 6th month where they took me up to physical therapy. Still had hoses, still had everything on. Trach was gone so I could talk. But the first day of physical therapy was to get used to sitting up again. I've been laying flat for months. I had a bald spot, I had bed sores.
Well, you can't hold that bald spot against yourself.
Well, just back here.
Okay.
But I was a mess. I was 130 pounds. I was jaundiced. I was just down to nothing. I was just half the man I was. So they rolled me into physical therapy, and they slid me onto this tilt table. And what the tilt table is, they kind of strap you down, and they slowly bring you up to a sitting position to get used to that feeling again. And as they started slowly cranking me up, the blood just rushed from my head, and I started getting sick. And so the nurses and therapists that was helping me at the time yelled for someone to bring someone so I can get sick in. And as I'm getting sick, I look at this person that's holding this thing for me, and I look at her and think, wow, you're hot. You are beautiful. And that was that moment. That was that moment where, you know what? I don't think life's so bad.
I might be able to figure this out.
I think I can figure this out. So her name was Sue, and she ended up being not my direct physical therapist, but another physical therapist that always helped. So every time they needed to stand me up on my artificial legs, I'd say, hey, why don't you ask that Sue girl to help us out? Well, one thing led to another, and I noticed Sue was always working behind these curtains. So I asked her one day what she did back there, and it's called myofascial release, which, through massage and deep heat and ultrasound breaks up scar tissue.
Oh.
So I'm thinking to myself, I've got a lot of scar tissue.
I need an appointment every day.
So I went back to my room, called my doctor, and told my doctor about it.
No.
Next thing I know, I get a script. I'm going to go back and get myofascial release. And that's how Sue and I got to know each other.
Wow.
She met a man that had absolutely nothing. Like I said, I'm just a shell of a man, no legs, just down to skin and bones. And she fell in love with a man that,
I get it.
She fell in love with a man that had nothing. And she saw past all the bad in Cam, I guess.
It's a picture of Christ.
Yeah.
Well, she works with you, and you get those massages and the physical therapy, and you start to rehab. I think your core muscles, it becomes really important that you work on those.
I got stronger. I could sit up in my wheelchair. I can move around again. I can worked on the core muscles so I can learn how to at least stand and walk, and release me as outpatient. And nice thing is that gave Sue and I another opportunity to get to know each other as being outpatients, because then we could date. I tell you what, within 6 months we were engaged. Within the year we were married.
Wow.
I've been married for 26 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
When you get married, what do you do for an occupation?
I had to go back to school. I wasn't building houses anymore. There's no way walking trusses with these things. So, no way. So I went back to school and stayed in the construction field just because that's what I've always known. And now I'm a fire sprinkler engineer for a company here in Fort Wayne.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Along the way, you had a passion for hunting, and you figured you would never hunt again. Is that right? Yeah. And was it your brother-in-law?
My brother-in-law.
What did he say?
Well, what I did was, after I got out of the hospital, I sold every bit of hunting equipment I had because I didn't think I could ever do it again. Sold my guns, my bow. I mean, I sold it all. And he talked me into buying a bow. He said, "Come on, we can figure this out." And I looked at myself and I'm like, "How? I know what it takes to hunt. I don't think I can do that with this." And he said, "Oh, we'll figure it out." It did take us a while to figure out what the legs can and can't do. And the nice thing is I was getting stronger and stronger. And I was figuring out how to, we started from hunting from the ground in 1 year. And we slowly got better and better to the point where I was shimmying up trees with these legs on. And that's how I got my first buck. Being disabled was just pulling myself up a tree, sliding these legs over. And
You eventually learned how to do it on your own too,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that God took your brother-in-law's prompting and your passion and puts it all together, and now you're hunting, and God takes that platform and does something really special with it. Can you describe what happened?
Yeah, well, I got in that whole thing was, well, if I can climb a tree, what else can I do? And I just started doing more and more things. Got into downhill skiing and kayaking and swimming and basketball, and I mean, name a sport. I was trying it just to see if I can do it.
Now, when you're trying the skiing, do you wipe out a few times?
Oh, I wipe out quite
Okay.
a bit, yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like me when I first started with these legs. I knocked all the kids down on the bunny hill, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it took a while, but yeah, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. Mm-hmm. But anyway, like I said, I wanted to see what else I could do, and I started getting involved in other organizations, and I always wanted to go up to Canada to go deer hunting, and that's how it all started. I had a goal, and I got a hold of an organization called Buckmasters, and asked them about if they knew anybody that were willing to take a handicap hunter, because it's not easy catering to a handicap hunter. Making sure he gets to the woods, everything's safe and everything's okay. Anyways, he found me an outfitter in Canada. Went up there, was able to do it. Met with the guy from Buckmasters, his name is David Sullivan, and we became best buddies. And then he invited me out to another disabled hunt. And finally one day he said, "Hey, I need help with this organization, helping with taking care of disabled hunters. Would you be willing to help me?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, heck yeah, that's what I want to do."
Yeah.
And that's how it all started. I did that for about 10 years, volunteering my time to Buckmasters, and traveled the country, met hundreds and hundreds of people, had a great time. But I met this gentleman in Utah. I was on a mule deer hunt. So here we are on top of a mountain in Utah, and this guy walks up to me and asks me what I'm doing there. I said, "Well, I'm just here to check out the place to see if we can get handicap hunters." And he said, "Well, my name is Roger Davenport." He said, "I've got a ranch in Wisconsin. I love what you're doing with the disabled kids. Can you bring some kids up?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, heck yeah." So we did a great hunt that year. And same thing, Roger and I just became very close. And about 5 years of working with Roger, doing disabled hunts through Buckmasters, he retired from his ranch that he had. But then he contacted me. He says, "You know what?" He says, "I'm bored. I miss the hunting that we did. And I just got done reading Purpose Driven Life."
Wow.
He said, "I know my purpose, and that is to work with disabled kids and take them hunting. That's my only joy that I have. That's what my family loves. Will you help us?" And I remember driving down the road and he's telling me this. I'm like, "Roger," I said, "if God's telling you to do this, that's all I need."
Yeah.
That's all I need. I said, "Absolutely, let's start it." And that was the beginning of the Way Outfitters.
Which was became a television program.
Yeah, we did it for a few years on our own, and we were like, you know what, we need some exposure. So we raised up some funds. We did a TV show. We did 13 episodes. We traveled down to Key West with fishing. We were up in Canada hunting. We were in Texas hunting. We were all over. We had a great time. Great time.
Now, through a particular relationship, I think you get invited to church out of state. Is that right?
Yes.
I want you to describe how all that unfolded.
Picture a Norman Rockwell painting.
Yeah.
Okay, it's Kansas. Flat as can be, dirt roads. And at the end of this dirt road is this white church with the tall steeple. I mean, it looked like something out of
exactly what you would picture.
Exactly what you picture. I walked in there, and I have never been so welcomed by a group of people. People I don't even know are hugging me, shaking my hand. that feeling of belonging came upon me.
Do they know anything about your disabilities?
No.
And they're so warm?
No. I was walking with a cane back then, but no, I don't think they know. So I'm sitting in the pew, and the pastor's giving us service that morning, and I don't know what it was. It's just that feeling came over me. I was just warm. I just knew there was something different. We had lunch after service, and I headed home. Now, at the same time this was going on, my wife was at home in Fort Wayne, church shopping. She was questioning her faith and wanted to find something different in her life, and she was searching for God in a different way.
For a relationship.
Yeah. So when I came home, I told my wife, I said, "Where to sing?" I said, "I went to church." And she looked at me like, "You went to church?" I said, "Yeah, I went to church." I said, it felt weird. It felt almost right. And she said, "Well, I'm glad you said that because I just found a church." And instantly I think, oh my gosh, why'd I open my mouth? I don't want to go to church.
It was okay the one time for
but
Norman Rockwell.
Okay, now you're going for two.
Uh-huh.
But same thing, out of respect for my wife, I knew how hard she was trying to find her relationship, that I said, okay, I'll go to church with you. And it was Grable Missionary Church. And
Bill Lepley.
Yep, Pastor Bill, love him. And I was the typical first guy and go on the church type thing. I found the last seat, the last pew on the end so I can escape if I had to. And we sit down, and I tell you what, it was as if Pastor Bill was speaking to me just that day. It's like everybody just disappeared. Here's me, a 40-year-old man. I'm starting to break down in front of my wife, crying. I'm hiding my emotions. Jesus, he welled up in me that day. That was it. He grabbed me that day. I left that church. I told my wife, I said, that's it. We're going to church.
Wow.
That was the day. And it's been faithful to God ever since.
And that would be the moment where you drew the line in the sand, put the stake in the ground, and surrendered your life to Christ.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the day that I'm changing.
And Bill ended up baptizing you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You write about so much more in your book than we've talked about. The unbelievable trip to Africa with your son, and we just don't want to give it all away.
Yeah.
Everybody should buy the book, Dead 13 Times, and learn about God's remarkable story of restoration through your life and how you've used what he's done in you to bring his restoration to others. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.